where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
A revolutionary, and you're gonna have to keep on saying that.
I went to one of the protests, particularly in front of Tesla, this weekend, and I was, I was just walking, basically just walking around trying to pass out more information about like just Elon in general. But one thing really stuck out to me was when a car drove up, and he, like, this guy, he was a MAGA guy, and he started yelling about, hey, Trump and all this stuff, and I'm not sure if he said it, but one of the things that they say is like Trump 2028 or something like that. And just hearing like kind of hearing like him start yelling, I yelled back. I said, yeah, protect the billionaires. And what's crazy is that I looked around after he left, and I realized that I was really an outcast to that particular group. Those people, when I looked around, I realized they were saying they had a whole bunch of anti-Trump slogans. Wasn't necessarily targeted at Elon, which isn't really the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem was I seen some of them deciding to, when the light turned red, to march across the street holding a Ukrainian flag, right? And trying to brandish that flag in front of everybody. And this is, I think this is interesting. This is like very interesting, because turning around, looking in and taking in this particular protest, I realized, I was like, man, what's crazy about this particular situation is I may have had just as much or more in common with the guy in the car. So, independent Trump supporters, I want you to really take in this message, because I think this is really important, right? And there may be parts where you kind of don't really like what's being said, and that's cool too, but at least take the moment to hear me out if you feel like you really resonate with the idea of being independent. The truth is, if you've been following really the actions behind this administration, I believe that if you still claim to be a logical-minded person who is principled, you are firmly lying to yourself. And particularly if you are a content creator, many of you guys are probably captured by a very vocal and a very loud MAGA audience. I guarantee you that real independents are watching. They may not be as loud, but they are a part of the views that you get. Now, both parties, I think, have their own separate delusions. But by now, you're witnessing Trump destroy our reputation on a world stage. There are serious problems with a lot of international governments out there. But let's be really clear about this. At best, at very best, Trump is not being precise in the way he talks or his reasoning behind doing the things that he's doing. At worst, he's actually trying to destroy our reputation and possibly a lot more. we we should focus on actual crimes taking place, not simply disrupting lives of immigrants to fulfill some kind of quota of the foreign prisoner, or to ship people to a foreign prison of a dictator is absolutely unacceptable. Disrupting trade with no express plan of action to stimulate this country is tremendously ignorant. The Epstein list has not been released. All the dog whistling to the racist. To be honest with you, I'm a black guy, but I wouldn't view that as a tremendous problem if he was fixing the actual economy. I think there are just as many racists on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of our aisles. Democrats, they just virtue signal better. U.S. aid, it was a tool that was most likely used for regime change. But we did not take a scalpel to that organization. We didn't see the resources that people depended on that maybe we needed to adjust and have them wane off of it if that was going to be the case. And if that isn't bad enough, we may have just shifted hands in the State Department to oppress people. So rather than the carrot and the stick approach, it's just simply the stick now. Also, private militaries are all over Africa. I don't think they'll simply stop working for the large corporations once U.S. aid and the embassies are gone. And at the very least, we shouldn't be giving Israel weapons and money. But Trump doing something positive only after receiving a quote-unquote gift is unacceptable. Us sending money and weapons to Ukraine is something that would probably make the CIA happy. But this idea of what we created now, this environment where people, particularly with this whole Ukraine situation, the idea of people somehow stepping around the homeless people while clutching their pearls, loudly demand that we help Ukraine. It hasn't quite dawned on me yet in terms of why that is, and what the justification behind that is. But if it is as crazy as it seems, we can't justify, no matter what the end result of that particular meeting was, in terms of the immediate end result with that particular conflict. I think we have to really realize that that was a world looking at us the way Zelensky was handled in that office. And there was certainly, I would say, if we came to the same conclusion in terms of about that particular situation and the people in that room, there needed to be a very real understanding that more people were going to see this other than the MAGA supporters. That is something that we got to look at, right? And this idea of like selling cars for Elon on the White House lawn, that's just straight up embarrassing. That is, I mean, that is just straight embarrassing. Uh, and the and Elon himself, he's probably costing more money than he's actually saving. There's this is theater. And it kind of feels like I'm asking a lot, but I feel like we need really all of our representatives, but especially our president to have morals, right? Shouldn't be a vending machine that pushes out anything based on who pays him. And I think MAGA is willing to overlook most of this, and until it really dawns on them in terms of impacting day-to-day life. And if you're an independent content creator in general, or you consider yourself to be an independent content creator, I think you should take it as your responsibility to talk about both sides, even if it appears like your audience would turn against you if you talk about certain things regarding this administration. And this is important now because, like I said before, we're gonna have to explain this after this guy moves out or he's moved out, right? We gotta explain this, and I don't mean explain this to the people in this country. I mean explain this on a world stage about what took place and what was happening. And it's important now because I think I went to one of the protests, particularly in front of Tesla, this weekend, and I was just walking, basically just walking around trying to pass out more information about like just Elon in general. But one thing really stuck out to me was when a car drove up, and this guy, he was a MAGA guy, and he started yelling about hey Trump and all this stuff, and I'm not sure if he said it, but one of the things that they say is like Trump 2028 or something like that. And just hearing kind of hearing him start yelling, I yelled back. I said, yeah, protect the billionaires. And what's crazy is that I looked around after he left, and I realized that I was really an outcast to that particular group. Those people, when I looked around, I realized they were saying they had a whole bunch of anti-Trump slogans. Wasn't necessarily targeted at Elon, which isn't really the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem was I seen some of them deciding to, when the light turned red, to march across the street holding a Ukrainian flag, right? And trying to brandish that flag in front of everybody. And this is, I think this is interesting. This is very interesting because turning around, looking in and taking in this particular protest, I realized I was like, man, what's crazy about this particular situation is I may have had just as much or more in common with the guy in the car. And that's what is really, I think, despicable when it comes down to the Democrats today as they exist now. Because no one else was yelling based on the fact that the billionaire class are going out of control, or just out of control. They were essentially, I mean, these guys now, they're where like I say where still, I don't know why. The Democrats they're now the party of really the pearl clutchers. They're the party that's really like this is what they do, and and they're becoming that slowly, and that's a very big problem when you think about it. I mean, we even got like some representative who's being staged as a fighter against Trump, and he is literally a billionaire. He is literally a billionaire, and I mean, and by all means, all of them may not be evil. I don't think that's fair to say, but at the very least, let's be honest about this. You don't go around and say, oh. You don't become a billionaire by looking around at all your employees and all the people you work with and looking around on the streets and say, man, income inequality, man, I gotta do something to fix this. What's more likely to happen is you look at all your friends, the people around you, you say, hey, Jim's got he's got a bigger yacht than me. Maybe I can get that kind of yacht too. I just need to maybe just get a little bit more money on my side, and that's a positive situation, because then you're kind of just taking the idea of what you're doing for that money out of the equation. But sidebar to say, we got to explain this situation. We have to, and that's more important, I think, than you're upsetting your MAGA audience. I think we have to think about that, because this is a situation that people may look around and they may say things like, "Oh my God, what's gone wrong for Trump to rise again?" And and it's easy to just say things like, okay, racism, obviously, yeah. Yeah, sure. We can totally say that. We can say that, and we can completely ignore everything else. Or we can be real about that. And we're kind of like, you guys who are still these quote unquote Trump independent voters or whatever, Trump supporting independents, you guys kind of don't have, you're losing capital in terms of how people treat your opinion, slowly but surely, right? You got I think the one I really think about, the one figure I really think about is Tim Pool, right? Like he is serving it straight to his he's serving straight red meat now, but he was at the Wall Street protest, right? These are people, there are no at this point, if you've been following along, there are no logical independent thinking Trump supporters, right? I think I want to cut it off at logical right there, but I mean, honestly, like, because if you are informed and you still do support this, there's a tremendous problem. But I want to make sure that after this situation, after what takes place, we can explain this, because this situation now, we were put here. We were put in this situation. And we were put here. Trump is a symptom of what this environment that was created, because the Democrats, they stopped fighting for free health care. They're not going to rein in, no one's talking about reining in BlackRock. We're not talking about something I really like to do is really dismantle and decentralize like Hollywood. We need to get that is just, I feel like that's a whole tangent in itself. But the idea of also like nature rights, the idea of just stop allowing corporations to poison us. That is not the messaging, right? It's right now the messaging that Democrats were really yelling really loud about was the LGBTQIA plus, right? That was the messaging. And this is interesting because first off, the QIA plus, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, these are just normal people looking to be treated specially in some way, shape, or form. That's something I completely stand by. When it comes down to trans people in general, there should be no association between trans people and child drag shows. That should not exist. That affiliation that people make, that Republicans make in their mind, should not exist. And that needs to be the correction, the way to really protect this community of people, because I highly doubt these guys got in a room and really said to themselves that we really need to figure out our messaging to underage people. I don't think that was a thing. And you guys are welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. But right now they're in way more danger now based on this. And it almost seemed like this idea we needed, in terms of our government needed to get people emotionally riled up. They wanted people to not talk about the raise and increase in rent, the reign of BlackRock, the just blatant ignoring the idea of free healthcare and really just not even giving Bernie a shot. They wanted to do that. That was the thing that they wanted. And they wanted to rile people up enough to get away with it. And this idea of what's happening now and what we see now, as it exists today, I think the Democratic Party should be invalidated on a tremendous stage, right? None of this, none of these AstroTurf protests or anything like that come up and about. All of that needs to just be they just need to be ridiculed into a box. And that's going to take a lot of people to do that, in terms of a lot of people that are left-leaning to do that. And I mean, it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot to ask in terms of particularly with the trans community, to stand up against this stuff. I know they get a lot of heat when it comes down to the things that really they point out. And when I say they get a lot of heat, I don't mean from the right. I mean from the left. They get silence from the left. Say, hey, keep in line and keep this up. And but we got to put these guys in a box. They need to they need to be shipped off. And whatever comes after this, it doesn't need to be the billionaire representative. That's the good billionaire is going to stand up and fight for us. It doesn't need to be. I'm not playing. There's one of the representatives that's being platformed right now. It's like literally a CIA agent. I think she's like a rep in Missouri or something like that, or Michigan. Missouri maybe. But it was just like, she's literally a CIA agent. It's like, I swear, it's like the Democrats, they seen Trump and they said, you know what? This is gonna get bad. How bad can we get and still respond and it shift back to us? I'm like, putting a CIA agent up in front of us as a representative and to openly state that you are a CIA agent, you have to be a level of disconnected that is admirable. That is beyond institutionalized delusion right there. But in terms of this whole idea of really, I think where things go from here, I want to be cautious about this because, like I said, they don't, like, Democrats are trying to avoid talking about the things that really matter in a lot of situations, and they'll say things like, "Oh, we need to, loosen up on the culture war and stuff like that," and that's totally an argument, sure. But if you're making that argument before the idea of free healthcare, before the idea of reining in BlackRock, before the idea of corporations poisoning us, you're the problem. You are exactly the problem. You are still the problem. This is not going to be a teeter-totter situation, right? We're not the kid going back and forth between two divorced parents, and that needs to end. That ideology that they're the only two options, that needs to end. That needs to end now. And this idea of really showing the world, I think is gonna, it needs to be in place. It needs to be in place for that, right? This idea of really putting a stop to this, because when I think when we stand up, right, we need to realize that this is something that we are standing for, right? What we are standing for, right? We don't need to protest. I saw one time, it was protests are just a bunch of people screaming to the upper class, "We don't like this, you fix this." And that needs to be a different situation now. And the independent people out there, you're becoming more important now, because the solution needs to come from someone that holds principle, right? Those people, that clout that you got online, that's nice, but when it comes down to what happens on the ground, I think your voice matters. I think it's definitely tremendous. But you need to also recognize that there's some kind of like content creator who's like really popular. He tried running for office and he got like less than like it was really, I think he got like less than 5% of the votes. And what that really taught me was, oh, this online world does not translate well into, I mean, particularly politics, right? Particularly people going into a booth and voting for you. So when it comes down to your messaging, what you put out there, that matters. That matters. That matters, I would say. That's going to be the thing that really hits, right? Not the amount of views that you get, right? It's going to be the messaging that comes out, those ideas that transform, because somebody who watches or somebody who gets more views you may help mold and shape their opinion. And that's important, right? That message that you put out there, because like I said, these guys are losing a lot of, these guys are losing capital. Like, I don't care what, you can't redeem you can't be Tim Pool and redeem yourself to me and to a lot of people. It's just, hey, oh yeah, you're the guy that's the shill. Sure, like, a lot of independent, quote unquote independent guys, they are just simply out there. They're just they will do whatever the audience says, right? And that's, arguably they're worse than the mainstream, and that's saying a lot. They like, and that's not even an argument at this point. I think I seen a clip where like I don't remember exactly the words, but Tim Pool, he's stuck. he's living rent free in my head. But that idea of like him being in the Oval Office, or some kind of meeting in the president's place, and he said something, but like all I heard was, "Hey, I'm a good boy. Tell me I'm a good boy," and it was just like. Like it. I think it's really embarrassing, and I think I'd really like if you are more of a independent thinker, I would say, and you really do resonate with the idea. I think you should take it upon yourself and take it as a responsibility to speak out more against this, and call it what it is. This is insanity. When I think a lot of people now, like, I think another reason why I would say independent voters or independent thinkers or content creators are more important now than ever is because this idea of what's happening, particularly with Doge, right? We got this branding for the people, for the Oompa Loompas that are carrying out what he's doing, and that's the thing, right? We're calling them like goons. We're calling like and that idea of like lawless people and it's just savagery. You get those when you think of like goons. If civil society fails, you are worried. You are consciously worried about goons flourishing. That's the idea of goons, right? No matter how large of a group they need and stuff like that, but you're still worried that they'll get in a group and they'll become a part of a group and they will descend us into chaos, right? These guys, Elon and these guys, they are not the people who flourish. These are the people who get passed around like a box of Newports in a max security prison. That's who they are. These aren't. There's no strong arming taking place. I want you guys to understand something. Particularly, what I really want people to think about is the bureaucrats, because they are bureaucrats at the head of the DOD. They knew that, hey, we're not going to do anything about whatever's taking place while essentially this guy's destroying everything and prancing around like he's destroying the deep state. We're not going to do anything, right? So all of the people who would be actual protectors of the people, they kept them handcuffed. They said, hey, we're not going to do anything. And do you know what happened when he went to the DOD? In terms of Elon, he sat down. He had a meeting with those people. It was a very formal thing. There was no hostile takeover. Because because essentially you just see Elon just with a red face after you just get the smacked out of him and told to go home. That'd be it. That would have been it. And that's what's so frustrating about the situation, because people are up in a roar about this particular situation, but they don't understand that deal between those bureaucrats at the DOD and whoever else. I don't think it's necessarily Elon. I don't think of Elon as like a deep state guy in terms of a real competent guy. But what I am worried about is J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, Palantir, and their connections with this administration. Is everybody gonna point to Elon when things go kind of crazy? I don't know. I'm not sure, but I am definitely suspicious of the idea of J.D. Vance being nominated after this quote-unquote assassination attempt where Trump was like almost sniped or something. And then Elon comes in the gate right then as well. Like, wait, to give him money and to give him more of a platform and a voice. I'm like, that was it for me. I think that was the moment. That was the moment for me. I seen that and I was like, okay, you guys are saying the quiet part out loud by this guy who, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like JD Vance came out of nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. But now he's the vice president. I'm like, this is interesting. And I see like Peter Thiel and I'm like, and Palantir having all this, combined with all this idea of Elon getting data, that's crazy. This stuff doesn't just disappear. There's no court order that just disappears the data that just transferred, right? Things when stuff like this happens and there's like a big hoopla and now people can say, oh, it's because of Elon. That's to me, I would say that is a handshake that took place across the aisle. That is a handshake that took place from one aisle to the other. That is not something that we're going to say, oh, it's just those crazy Republicans, I guess, and now we got to deal with this and that. No. This whole idea of what's going on, we got to, I think it's more important now than ever before, because the same way with our messaging or our kind of vision to the world, or our, the way we're seen by the world, we're going to have to really deal with what really took place, because there was no government efficiency being there was no government efficiency in terms of the actual like goals for this particular theater show that went on, right? The military got more money. Let's be real. Let's be completely honest about this. You're trying to make cuts to Medicaid and Medicare and stuff like that. I'm just like, this is interesting. This is really interesting. And I think what's really disheartening is I got a lot of good information from a lot of people who were branding themselves as really independent thinkers, right? And I feel like I got like a lot of insight from that. And shout out to Whitney Webb. I think she's like one of the few who seem to have principles. And it's funny because as soon as she starts talking against kind of like this administration, so many of these supporters have turned against her now, which is so interesting. But we need to understand something. This idea of speaking as independent thinkers or independent content creators or whatever, there was it makes me think of it was a protest that took place, and in one of these protests there was the government decided to put out like one of those IMSI capture things, basically fake cell towers to get everybody's information. And the government does all kinds of shady stuff when they don't have like a lot of control over a particular area. But the thing is, they put this particular cell tower in this location. They got all these numbers, and rather than round everybody up and spend those resources, and if they had that, which would have been too much if they did have them at all, they sent everybody a text message. They sent everybody a text message at the rally, and they said, hey, go home. And that was more so them trying to pretend like they had more power than what they really had over those protesters, because the idea was, oh, these people know who I am. When in all likelihood, they probably didn't know if you were like at the cafe across the street. They probably didn't know a lot, but they wanted that. that was real power for them. And I think now more than ever we have to realize and come to a conclusion that this is power that they're not going to get in America. So hold that information, marinate on it, or just comment some hate mail if you want. I don't really care as long as you listen.